Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be looking at issue 3 of the 18 issues collected in the Complete 8-Ball. I'm going through and just reviewing one issue at a time. I've read some of the longer form works that are in here, like Ghost World, but I haven't read every issue all the way through, like with all the little short stories and stuff. So it's cool that this is all collected now in a facsimile edition. Another thing that's interesting about the facsimile edition is on the covers, where there's like over coloring on the colors. Like here you have a blue going over the black, and so there's that little bit of like ruby lith or whatever that had been cut out and pasted on there. You see that it's not perfectly reproduced. Like now you could go back and make sure that that blue got in there with just the black around it. That would be my preference, but since it's a facsimile edition, that's kind of like for historical purposes, really is what you're doing when you're keeping all the letter columns and everything. I think that's a really smart move to show it exactly how it looked, and it prints beautifully. And I know a lot of people kind of like that just for nostalgic reasons. I'm not a terribly nostalgic guy, so I would update that. But it is a particular look, and it speaks to a particular time. This whole thing is, this was published in June of 1990, and there's other interesting little like time capsules of the time and that relate to what's going on now. So, for example, on the inside front cover here with the Abral profile, he's profiling a televangelist and kind of doing a takedown of them. That's funny, but also even funnier in that like a similar takedown is now possible for the other side of the political spectrum. Now I'm seeing, the ideologues on both sides. There's like a religious fervor to both sides. And like he's pointing out in here, it's all backed by money. This guy's not actually religious in any real sense. He's trying to get people to send him money. So I feel like this can apply to multiple different people now, whereas in the 90s it seemed like, it's pretty much you're just going to take down the religious conservatives that are holding us all back. So that's funny to me that it could be dual applied today. And then I really enjoyed looking in the background at some of the books back here. Names jumping out to me: McLuhanism, so Marshall McLuhan, I'm assuming. Trump's Art of the Deal, that's obviously extra funny and almost prophetic now, especially in the context of like conservative religion. And then he also has Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. So it was a good way to paint extra picture of this character, and it kind of feels prophetic in some sense with the Trump. So I enjoyed that. Then we get part 3 of Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron. Again, really the only thing I feel about this is it feels like he's kind of picking up where especially Gilbert Hernandez started in Love and Rockets, with like the just kind of surreal, get the feeling that he's making it up panel by panel and just seeing where it goes. That's how the story reads to me, at least, that each episode seems to be like a little new chunk of it that he leaves like a problem to solve at the end. Also, again, picking up on what I believe would have been Charles Burns' influence. Like this panel here looks so Charles Burns to me. So I don't know the time on that, but I'm assuming that Burns, because Burns is like a more sophisticated version of this. So I don't know if Burns saw Clowes and went and perfected it, but my impression is that Clowes saw Burns and was influenced by him. I also don't know the timeline on like Chris Ware's potato character, but it's funny because there's this like potato looking girl in here as well, Tina. And just some of the rendering on the face and stuff is like a tighter, it's like if you took Chris Ware's kind of the style that he has on his potato character and then cleaned it up to the polish of someone like Charles Burns. So it's interesting stylistic thing, and I think interesting in terms of lineage. And then I also see a lot of setting up like Adrian Tomine's work in this, and thinking about the lineage of artists as well. So that's all cool, but I don't think the story's compelling. I mean, it seems like it would be a lot of fun to do a story like this, but you're kind of just like asking the audience to go along for a string of nonsense. Like it doesn't seem like much is coming out of it, but it's unsettling for sure. Like this right here, where Tina the potato lady is getting really turned on and wants to jump his bones, and it looks like she laid eggs for him. I'm not sure. So you get caught up in the strangeness of it, but I don't think it lands any great point in the end. It's more of an ambiance piece. Then this is another very Adrian Tomine. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Kind of pre that, I think. Again, I don't know the timeline, but these very kind of sparse, very clean street level views. This story is interesting. It's the stroll. This one seems autobiographical, so it's all done from like the perspective of someone walking, and just it's their thoughts as someone goes by them. And the person is just a raging complainer, basically. They hate everyone and everything. They're misanthrope. This is like what I think about when I think about Clowes' work, is just like the kvetching artist complaining about everyone and everything and lashing out at everyone and everything, like in a very Gen X, like rebellious 90s way. It just feels 90s to me. I've never liked that aspect of the work, and I think part of it, honest self-admission, is that this interior narrative actually sounds a lot like me on in my worst moments. So I don't think I like that. I don't think I like encountering that, and I don't know why someone would. I mean, I get it. It's a very real experience, and I like at the end um, that he puts a self critique in there. The last caption says, "I wish I were more of a humanitarian. I really feel a sense of kinship with people who have altruistic humanitarian values. I admire them. Unfortunately, most people seem like mean-spirited rodents to me, or ants or something." So it's like really he's the one who's an asshole. He's not altruistic. He's not humanitarian. Um, and he's projecting that onto everyone around him. He's projecting his own discomfort. So there's an admission of that, which is interesting and makes it more complex. But it's also another one of those like, oh, if you see this flaw in yourself, why would you lean into it? Like, don't, I mean, I guess calling yourself out publicly, you're hoping to correct your behavior, but also like just don't indulge in that side. Like, I have that side to me. I'm not very likely to make a story about it. So that's always unsettled me about Clowes' work. That's my general impression of him, is that he's just kind of mean to people, and his view of people is very filtered through like a cartoonist like this, someone who does caricature and is kind of looking for the worst qualities in someone, and that extends to the way he generalizes personality as well. I've never really liked that about his writing, and stories like that reinforce it. And again, that's probably because I'm encountering the worst aspects of myself. Um, so got to be fair there. Like I see why a lot of people would have felt refreshed by that. Like, yeah, someone else is doing all these takedowns that we want. Um, so I get it, just not for me. And then this is part two, I believe, of the ongoing Dan Pussy story that was also collected in Pussy. I think I've read that, but some of it's been a while, so this seems pretty unfamiliar to me. And this is that same kind of caricature, like applied to personality as well as looks, approach to doing a takedown of the comic industry, basically. And again, that's something where like I like books about comics and the comic industry if they're revelatory, but this kind of thing where you're just leaning into the character aspect of it doesn't interest me so much, especially in the context of like trying to get people to take comics more seriously, which obviously Dan Clowes is interested in. It just seems like a bad rhetorical strategy to me to go immediately like reinforce. And it's probably has a lot of truth to it, but to reinforce the stereotypes of like the goofball guys. I'm always about like, don't talk about it, just be about it. If you really think comics can be something better and be serious, just make better serious stuff. Don't kind of throw the false impression out there and reinforce it. Just avoid it altogether. So just a strategic difference that we have about how to reach an end goal, I think. And it's still a good story, and some of his takedowns of people are pretty funny. Like here it's showing him being introduced to his first like indie artist, and it really blowing his mind and getting caught up in that, and then getting caught up in this magazine, Emperor's New Clothes magazine, which is pretty obvious. They're talking about Raw, and they're talking about, oh, each one comes with an individual page ripped out, which I know Raw had an issue where the pages were ripped out or torn or something like that. Clowes just talked about that in that kayfabe interview he did that I really enjoyed. So he was definitely doing that, and then you get a sense that this character here, Gummo Bubbleman, is supposed to be Art Spiegelman, and here it's like, and knowing that Clowes worked with him after listening to that interview, it's like pretty obvious that he's kind of poking fun at him and like, yeah, it's not about the money, it's starve for your art, man. And then he's like doing a takedown of like these artists trying to stand out and be singular. Oh, I ink with an ostrich feather. not as far as me. My shirt is made from rhinoceros skin, plus I'm a heroin addict. So that artists need to, for validation and to stand out and be unique and singular and idiosyncratic. He's poking fun of that, which is, again, a funny thing to do when you're kind of engaged in that as well, like this self takedown. But with Clowes, it often feels like, even though he has hints of self-awareness, it often feels like he's really just railing against everyone else and hates everyone else. And I've always had a hard time with that in his work. Working with Raw doesn't work out, so he goes to Highbrow Comics, which is obviously Fantagraphics, and then he meets Larry Anger, who's obviously Gary Groth. And Gary Groth just goes on this big rant and makes fun of how literate Gary's critiques are. And then he comes back to his writing instructor, and she tells him something that in the interview with Kayfabe, he said, it sounds like Robert Crumb told him, is, hey, quit drawing comics for a while and go get some real life experience, and then you'll have something to write about. And that's how I feel about comics like this a lot. You know, like, this is just someone who's only done comics, only done art, and that's all that they know to write about. And then again, he does this kind of self-critique here where he goes, and it's like, okay, you know, write about what you know, write about your experience. No superheroes, spaceships, or any of that nonsense. Do something about your personal experience. And then he just goes and stares at the blank page, and it's like this self-critique, but also highlighting the problem I have with Clowes' work is that he hasn't lived enough life experience to make interesting stories. His life experience is being a grumpy cartoonist, walking around, you know, being a misanthrope, making fun of everybody and drawing. And I don't know that that's particularly compelling to me. The art is amazing, the writing's amazing. I just think it's a little hollow in that sense, and I think he knows it, and he's trying to undermine that by trying to subvert that problem in the work by acknowledging. It's like, at least if I admit it, it's okay. And it's like, if you know it's a problem, just don't do it. So I don't like that structure, and it seems like a very 90s, everyone's being ironic. Like, I associate that with that time period pretty heavily. So I don't know, just not my thing, but well done. In issue 2, he had put out a call for a prank phone call contest, which also seemed very 90s to me, and we have the winner here. It's too bad this was really internet existed, but it never home the way now. Like, now I could imagine a QR code where we could actually listen to the prank. That would be kind of funny to me. But it's cool to see that actually went through and happened. We got a Jim Woodring praise here. That's always cool. And then on the back, there's the back cover is this, what can robots do, and some answers. And Mr. Clowes, I don't know if you know, but now 32 years later, robots could make your comic book for you potentially. So it's funny to see the very underwhelming answers that people have relative to what robots can do now. That was fun for me. So that's issue 3. We'll continue on with issue 4, and we'll keep seeing like how much of my impression of Dan Clowes is like this bitter, raging guy continues. I'm really looking forward to when Ghost World shows up, because I have not read that in a long time, and my memory of that is a little bit kinder than my memory of some of his other work. So I'm excited about that. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel, the 2 best ways to support us are through our Patreon. The support there helps us buy the books that we review, and then most importantly is supporting what Sean's doing with Living the Line publishing of the books he has coming out. So we'll take a look at a couple of those now. Centralia is an awesome, gorgeous comic by rising Dutch star Miel van de Peet. This is his first work. It's a really great sci-fi story. There's a world in the future where the sun has gotten so hot that people can't be on the ground. So they have to run around. There's a lot of conceits that go with that. You know, what is the world that looks like? And I think you can see by the art that Sean's description of this book as like a Moebius for young adults, a YA Moebius, is a really great description of this really gorgeous and like wild, wacky, fun book. Plaza by Yokoyama Yuichi. This is translated by Ryan Holmberg and is very large for a manga, so that's a really cool feature of this book, this standard manga size. And this is just a 200 some odd page representation of what Yokoyama Yuichi thinks of the Carnival parade, and he's just made this like relentlessly loud and rhythmic book that pushes all kinds of amazing boundaries of what comics and manga are, and we could not recommend this book more. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.